Give me your top five running backs in the NFL right now.
All right. Well, I am starting from five and I'm working my way on up. At number five for the Minnesota Vikings, I have Dalvin Cook. At number four, I have Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. At number three, I am going to have Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. At number two, despite what a lot of people are going to say, I have Derrick Henry. And then, of course, at number one, I have Jonathan Taylor. The bias is going to show for sure, but I believe that the statistics will then back it up. Hear me out. I say Jonathan Taylor is going to last longer in this league. I say that Jonathan Taylor doesn't need to have the amount of carries that Derrick Henry does. I don't believe that Jonathan Taylor will be the only source of an offense for us outside of Derrick Henry, truthfully being one of the only main pieces remaining for that Tennessee Titans team now that A.J. Brown is gone. Derrick Henry averages anywhere between 25 to 30 carries a game in his NFL career. We've even seen multiple times where he's gone over 30 carries. That's a lot of taxing mileage on someone that's over 250 pounds at 6'3", 6'4". We've seen Derrick Henry had a pretty big foot injury or ankle injury, whatever it was last year. And we all know that running backs, lower extremity injuries tend to malinger throughout their careers. We know that that's one of the more grueling positions in the NFL. We know that being a running back, you're going to take a beating. And with Derrick being so big, he is one of those running backs like back in the day, like the Earl Campbell type of players that take beatings and keep going. It's like they get better as the game goes on because they're just abusing the linebackers and the secondary players if the offensive line is able to move the front four. I truly believe that with Jonathan Taylor's additional elusiveness and his strength, that he will end up overshadowing Derrick Henry. We all know that Derrick's numbers have been absolutely incredible since he's been in the league. I'm not taking it away from him. I know that Jonathan's only been in the league 2 seasons. I know Derrick's been in the league for well over 4 or 5. I understand the impact that Derrick brings because you have to immediately stack the box when he's healthy and he's on the field. But once again, between the injuries, between the amount of carries he's had in his career thus far, and just overall him getting older as well, not that he's old, but you just add on everything, I think truly and honestly that Jonathan Taylor is just a better overall running back, especially because of his ability to catch out of the backfield and obviously the offensive line that the Colts have available to them. We've had a rotation of quarterbacks since he's been in the league, but with him having his third year with his third different starting quarterback, and for him to have the impact that he's had thus far in only 2 seasons, I do believe that he is going to be the best overall running back in the NFL.
Well, Kevin, I pretty much have a similar list to you. The only difference is that I just have the only difference I have is just some of the players are just listed in different spots. So let me not waste any more time and let me get into my top five here. Let me just pull it up real quick. All right, so at number five, I have Joe Mixon. At number four, I have Dalvin Cook. At number three, I have Nick Chubb. At number two, I have Jonathan Taylor. And at number one, I have Derrick Henry. All five of these guys deserve to be in the top five. When I look at Joe Mixon, I love Joe Mixon's ability to be able to run the ball effectively when he gets touches. And I love the fact that he's a great threat out of the backfield. And I pretty much of the mindset that with the additions that the Bengals have made to their offensive line this offseason, they've really bolstered that part of their offense. I think that Joe Mixon is going to have a career year, not just in running the football, but I think Joe Burrow is actually going to be able to have time to be able to throw the ball to him. And I believe that when you have Joe Mixon, a great wide receiving threat out of the backfield, I think that it's not only going to serve Joe Mixon well, I think it's going to serve the Bengals to a larger extent very well going into next year. When I look at Dalvin Cook, he's been consistent when it comes to his overall production. It's really the only thing that I could focus on with Dalvin is just his inability to stay healthy consistently. That's really kind of been the only mark that I could use against him. But overall, when Dalvin is healthy, he's definitely a top five running back in the NFL. I mean, you can make a very good case that he's like one of the top two running backs in the NFC. You could honestly make an argument he could be. I mean, some people might have Christian McCaffrey in there, but it just kind of depends on how you see it. I don't even have Christian McCaffrey in this list simply just because I can't rely on his health. I can rely on Nick Chubb's a little bit more, and excuse me, not Nick Chubb, on Dalvin Cook's a little bit more. So I have Dalvin Cook at number four. So at number three, I have Nick Chubb, and I just think that Nick Chubb is a beast. He's been solid for Cleveland since he's arrived a couple years back. Now, I think there's going to be a little bit of a difference when it comes to how he's given the ball, just because you have a new quarterback in the fold. Baker Mayfield's out, Deshaun Watson's in, And we don't know necessarily if Nick Chubb is going to get the same opportunities that he's gotten when Baker Mayfield was a quarterback, when Deshaun eventually gets inserted into the starting rotation at that quarterback spot. Now, just because he may not be as effective as he used to be back in the day doesn't mean that he's not going to be effective. I think overall, Nick Chubb is one of the best power runners in the game. He's great after first contact. And I think overall, I could definitely see Nick Chubb going out and getting another 1,000-yard game on the ground, or not game, another 1,000-yard season under his belt, just because I think, especially when it gets cold, when it gets into November and December, I think Cleveland's going to really rely on their run game. And I think Nick Chubb is going to be the focal point in that. And I think, when it's all said and done, I think Nick Chubb's going to have a very successful season. And I firmly believe that he's the number 3 running back at this current moment in time. At number 2, I have Jonathan Taylor, much to the chagrin of Kevin. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the league. He is really on what I would consider a significant upward trajectory at this point in time. Had a career year last year. Essentially, I'm going to basically take something from Kev's train of thought. Just give him the damn ball. Just give Jonathan the ball and watch him do work. He was the lead. He was the league leading rusher last year. Had, I believe, over 1,800 yards rushing. Whenever he gets the ball, whenever he gets the rock, great things can happen. They have a great offensive line in Indy that gives him space to run through. And I think when it all comes down to it, if Jonathan Taylor stays healthy, I could potentially see Jonathan Taylor getting a 2,000-yard season at some point. It really just comes down to whether or not that the playbook comes down to giving him the ball 20 to 25 times a game. If they're able to do that consistently, and if he's able to get 4 or 5 yards a chunk, I could definitely see Jonathan Taylor going and getting a 2,000-yard season very soon. So overall, he's in a great spot with Indy. He's on an upward trajectory, and I could definitely see him becoming the best running back in the league. It's just not right now. That title does belong to Derrick Henry. Even though that Derrick Henry missed a significant amount of time last year, Derrick was on an absolute tear before he suffered his foot injury that pretty much sidelined him the rest of the season, except for the one playoff game that the Titans played against the Bengals. Derrick Henry is just a beast. To me, he is the full package when it comes to being able to, dodge defenders, be able to keep moving, keep staying upright after first contact. And as far as I'm concerned, he's probably one of the strongest running backs I've ever seen. He's the biggest running back I've ever seen just based off of his sheer size. I mean, for God's sakes, his freaking biceps and triceps are probably as big as my chest. I mean, imagine as an NFL defender trying to be able to tackle that on a consistent basis when he's getting the rock 20 to 25 times a game. To me, the Titans' entire offensive philosophy comes down to whether or not that Derrick Henry is effective. When Derrick Henry is, slicing through the A, B, and C gaps effectively, the Titans are going to roll. And as far as I'm concerned, if the Titans decide to give him the ball consistently, he could definitely go out and get 2,000 yards next season. I could totally see that happening. It just comes down to whether or not that he could stay healthy. That was definitely a point of contention last year. I think if he stays healthy, I think he's going to return to that dominant form like we saw before he got hurt last year. And to me, it's clear cut. Derrick Henry is clearly the number 1 running back in the game.